shock. 3 games in a row for grand finals.
I mean, you know what? If you told me that like 15 minutes ago, I would have been like, nah, you're crazy. But now, I don't know.
Oh my goodness, Wretch with a double
restock.
It honestly feels unreal. It's been 3 years, but the game looks so different gameplay-wise. Sure, it might not be apparent at first glance, and that's why I'm here to give you a showcase of what it promised to be a flashpoint in the competitive scene before COVID happened. Right then everybody, in this episode of Pro Player Analysis, we're going to look at the past for a little bit. None other than someone who was considered to be the next big shot on the scene, Wrench, who's been, around that time, showing an amazing performance for no more than 4 majors in a row. This is, of course, in 2019, right before COVID happened and flipped our entire world upside down. Before I talk about the set and the matchups we'll be looking at, I want to give you guys a little bit of context. It might not look like it, but this version of Brawlhalla is kinda different than the current one, as of the making of this video. If you want to go right into the analysis, go to and enjoy the video. Autumn's 2019 is much different than Autumn 2022. We can see it directly in the tournament pool itself. A bunch of the matches were playing on Shipwreck Falls, a map that will be eventually replaced with Demon Island. A small Brawlhaven also has its old look. We have the old blaster there, the new one being the change that happened recently on the angle it sends, and the old Serre Force. Qatar Nair doesn't have the current true combos it possesses now, as well as options like neutral light recovery and delay recovery being consistent only if you have the right knowledge depending on how you hit said moves. But according to Wrench, they are one if not the best versions of Qatar's up to date, open quote. 2019 Qatars were easily the best they ever been, consistent and had a lot of extra like old dash impulse on sidelight. Neutral light D-light much stronger off a string due to neutral light setup angle. Every pro will agree with me on that. So much that it was the Qatar's meta for months. We also have Cannon on its pre-rework state. Always a threat with the insane damage build and the serious deaths, you know. Those are some of the changes this patch had, but let's go and look at it more in depth. Player, Wrench. Region, North America. Tournament set, Autumn Shams 2019. And keeping it with the spirit of the first video, we're gonna stay with 4 games, but this time it will be 2 losses from the winner's side and 2 wins from the loser's side. With the generic explanation of why you can go around under the stage, we start off on Miami Dome. The staple scythe of Sandstorm already gave us a 3-piece, which is gonna determine the first minute or so of the match, followed by a pretty clever fast fall and recovery back to the stage from Wrench. To deny a prominent early Gimp, Wrench tries to fight back with a Gimp of his own, keeping Sandstorm away with Blaster Serre, but he hesitates on the last one and lets Sandstorm back on the stage. They both trade a couple hits, but nothing too crazy other than a very important miss on Wrench's side with Qatar's sidelight. A few neutral exchanges later and Sandstorm gets the first stock, chasing Wrench with Orb Serre, who is fishing a little bit too hard on trying to equalize the stocks and gets hit with 3 Orb Serres after a couple exchanges in neutral. Continuing with the back and forth, the game between the 2 players gets somewhat even over time, the only difference being Sandstorm having a tiny bit of a lead because of Fate's strength, and Wrench missing 2 opportunities to rack up damage, these being a drop sidelight after a dare, and a sidelight D-light that didn't lead to anything other than a neutral reset from both players. This takes us back on the stage where Sandstorm gets a couple hits on Scythe, and after a crucial miss on Wrench's part, he loses his stock by an orb recovery. Back on stage, Wrench again fishes too hard trying to even up the stock count, gets a couple Qatar hits that lead into nothing, and after what it looked to be a misinput or a very bold play, Sandstorm builds up another lead made of a 3-piece, and after another weird offstage interaction, Wrench finally takes the game to its last 2 stocks with a Qatar sidesick. On this situation, the neutral games become very terrifying for Wrench, because any hit from Fate's orb takes him into a deeper color that, 2 side hits and an easy serve punish from Sandstorm sealed the game. After losing 2 times in a row on Fate, it seems as if Wrench has figured out how to play around Sandstorm's Fate, leading up to him swapping to Limb Fate. Wrench's adaptation was shown on the previous match that was both quick and dominant on Wrench's side. Full with momentum after a 3-stock, we start off Game 4 with a few exchanges in neutral, leading Wrench onto making Sandstorm throw away his first weapon, as it looked like Wrench had complete control over the Blaster Cannon matchup on the first 30 seconds, followed by a tiny lead from Wrench and a missed edgeguard opportunity, really betting it all with that GC delayed Air that hit no one. It might have been a product of the momentum building up. Said momentum looks to rise even further after a couple hits from Wrench and a crucial bait with Qatar Nair. Let's pause here for a bit. Qatar delay recovery has been a controversial topic over the past few years. It either drops because your opponent jumped, you hit the delay on a weird spot, you jump recovery instead of raw recovery, and thus they fast fail, and also your opponent fast fail after the delay. This makes every Qatar interaction, at least with delay recovery, look like a bit of a gamble, but around that time in 2019, with the right knowledge, you can know how to solve half of those problems. Wrench baits a punish with a dash on fast fall nair, Sandstorm takes the bait, and as a result, Wrench is in the right position to line a fully stacked, delayed reverse jump recovery. Back to the game. Sandstorm's second stock is going to be crucial for the development of this game, since it looks like it's gonna be another sweep from Wrench's building momentum, who's been dealing ship damage to Sandstorm's stock. The game goes on until Sandstorm hits a Qatar Air that will lead into an air sealing Wrench's first stock. Back on the stage, both players choose to play around the Qatar Ditto. This means that they have to stick around each other tightly, since you can't outspace your opponent if they have the same threat range as you. Sandstorm starts to even out the damage by taking advantage of Wrench's misses, and he continuously punishes with sidelight D-light, and either an air or a recovery afterwards, both moves that serve the only purpose of being a download tool for Sandstorm, since he barely knows Wrench's dodge pattern on Qatars. The last sidelight D-light from Sandstorm shows this, as he gets the last nair as a read that sends Wrench into the offstage game, followed by a quick rampant and a surge sealing his second stock. Now Sandstorm is on the lead. Back on the stage we can see that again. Wrench tries to throw out losing Qatar 6 in hope of them to hit, just for set 6 to miss and lead onto more ship damage from Sandstorm's side, who gets a huge 3-piece read after a down weapon toss. This comes also with another of the Sandstorm's sidelight D-lights as a punish from, and yet again, another of Wrench's 6 that missed, but not for long since he also manages to hit a blaster side stick, evening up the stock count. Back on stage, the game doesn't extend for much longer, and after a couple of cannon hits, and the last of Sandstorm's download sidelight D-lights, the game is over. Overall, around these 2 losses, we can see some kind of pattern on certain scenarios. When Wrench is on the back end of the match, he often likes to go for risky stuff in form of 6, many of which don't even come close to hitting Sandstorm. This allows Sandstorm to get at most a decent lead. Sandstorm swapping characters is also a factor of one of those losses, but his Fate did look a bit stronger than the Limb phase, so let's see what Wrench had to say. Open quote. Scythe, mainly because leading up to that tourney, we had been in Grand so many times in a row, and I was so close to only getting reverse game-changing game by his Scythe. Although his Fate is a scary pick to me because of his ore being so imposing, and also a tough matchup for Qatars at times in my opinion. After the reset, I was just focused on maintaining composure because I knew I was up against someone who it was really hard to shake the mental off. So I had to be just as good at keeping myself in check. Normal set play except a little more confident behind my play, and me feeling like I'm a little bit ahead in terms of adaptations and info going on to the next game. As we all know, Wrench managed to keep his composure and he took the set into a reset. Let's dive into it. Now this is where things get serious. After a hard-stopping Game 5 on the winner's side, Sandstorm makes yet another swap, this time into the good old reliable Mordex, and a staple on his Brawlhalla career at this point. The timer goes down and we get into the match with Sandstorm grabbing the first weapon, but taking some unarmed damage by the hands of Wrench. Seconds later, he grabs some blasters and he gets a crucial read after a sidelight. He gets the old there sir conversion that will lead into even more damage in form of a very to the edge delayed Zerg. Sandstorm tries to reverse the offstage situation, but only to get caught by yet another delay that will lead into a kill. 42 seconds and Wrench is on the upper hand of the match. Knowing Sandstorm's dodge pattern, right when he grabs a scythe and tries to fight back, Wrench gets a huge read after a silent delay, a massive 4-piece that takes Sandstorm off stage, but that's where the story ends, since the most Wrench gets out of that situation is a Zerg and a Nair. Yet again we see Wrench throw out a couple signatures, but this is on a completely different context, since the momentum is piling up on Wrench's side. You can also see it on his movement. After a niche dash dance, he snatches a weapon right under Sandstorm. This gets Wrench a couple shape damage, followed by another weapon pickup, and a crucial delay jump recovery that seals Sandstorm's second stock. 2 minutes and 2 stocks have been taken. Sandstorm touches the ground and gets pressured immediately by Wrench's Catars, recovery, nair, delay, and plenty more moves that just go right after another. And if it wasn't enough already, Wrench's characteristic option after a silent on the edge pretty much steals the last stock of the game. At this point in time, Sandstorm was already crumbling apart. On game 2, he swapped back onto the Limfei just to get rolled by Wrench's rising momentum. We already know that swapping characters 24/7 isn't the way to go. For more info on the topic, go watch the first episode of Pro Player Analysis. Right onto game 3, Sandstorm just basically says fuck it and goes back to probably, and also according to Wrench, his best pick against him, Fate. Seconds into the game, we see a couple hit exchanges between Sandstorm and Wrench. We already know that this mostly goes in favor of Fate, since she has more strength than Lucian. The damage is really even until Wrench gets the Catars and gets a couple hits here and there, leaving Sandstorm in red, but this doesn't matter as Sandstorm's Fate gets to even up the situation with just a couple of hits compared to Lucian's Catars. And by the hands of the by now common Range 6, he loses his first stock. This will lead onto Sandstorm Orb to get even more damage after chasing and pressuring Wrench, who barely has gotten a hold onto some blasters. Said blasters get thrown away after literally doing nothing in favor of him. Right away, yet another niche dash dance positions Wrench right under Sandstorm, and he gets to even up the stocks with a weapon grab N-Sig. Right back on stage, Wrench decides to play the footsies game while throwing out safe moves to try and get Sandstorm out of place, followed by a 3-piece that slowly gets Wrench back into the game. Now he's the one who's pressuring Sandstorm on the Catar side matchup, leading Sandstorm to throw his side away after being put on a light orange in terms of damage. He grabs his orb, and just one silent delay after from Wrench, he gets Wrench's stock with a silent Zerg. We can really see here that orb has been Wrench's demise over the entire set pretty much. Back on stage, Wrench tries to go for yet another aimless Sig, and pretty much that only puts him further back on the game after getting punished with an orb D-Sig. But this does not stop him from keeping his feet on the game, and seconds after, he reads Sandstorm movement with 2 perfectly placed side Sigs that seal the second stock. Last stock situation, Wrench decides to keep up with Catars, since his blasters do pretty much nothing in this game, and that turns out to be a wise decision, because right when Sandstorm touches the stage, Wrench manages to find cheap damage that will lead onto a delay recovery punish read, aiming up the game. Keeping up the pace, we see why Catar Nair is one of the best moves in the game. Jump Nair, dodge Nair, jump Nair, all of those barely get punished by Sandstorm, and some of them even hit. Seconds after, Sandstorm apparently misinputs a side Sig that leads Wrench to believe that he can punish said side Sig, only for him to get baited onto an orb surge that was coming his way, though any offstage play gets denied after Wrench hits a forceless recovery and goes back onto the stage. Back on neutral, Wrench gets an air and a pretty bold read attempt after a sidelight delay. This puts Sandstorm further onto the damage and the game, and after what it looked to be a Sandstorm win, Wrench reads a panic dodge in from Sandstorm and seals the last stock. Wrench is your 2019 Autumn Champion and continues his major winning streak. I was actually relieved when he swapped to Faye. To this day, I'm confident that I can take anyone on in the Qatar's Ditto and win. Even if I need a slight bit of time to pick up on habits, I think I've got the most knowledge, experience, and raw hours on the weapon out of anyone in the game, so I'm always confident in the matchup. Even if it was Sandstorm, I was still more practiced on Qatar's specifically than him, and especially in the Ditto. No. After being sent to the losers bracket, I told myself I would lose on Lucian if I were to lose, because I wanted to prove myself I could do one on another legend than Asuri after winning 3 majors with just Asuri. This is a set that answers the debate of if X player was on his main, he'd surely win. Wrench managed to keep the composure after playing around 13 games in a row. He learned the do's and don'ts after a long losers run from winners semis. Plenty of time to watch the next players compete against each other to have a clear view of what he had to fight on the loser side. Leading up to Grands, he managed to put up everything he saw to the test, making Sandstorm swap from what it looked to be his most dominant pick on the tournament, to other panic options like the Lin Fei and clearly the Mordex. Although the Mordex was scary, in my opinion his fate was just a bit scarier during that period. And that far into the set, it seemed like the Mordex was a last stage effort that just gave me more confidence. This concludes the second episode of Pro Player Analysis. As always, if you have any suggestions about the format of this video and what can I do to improve, please leave it in the comments. And as always, thank you for watching. Majors with just Asuri. Oh my fucking god, that that's like that takes most of my voice. Oh my god, shit, that was so hard. I can't do fucking voice acting for shit. Oh my god.